Hello, welcome to another video, and today we're going to be looking at how to strengthen the obliques and the QL. So really we're looking at the trunk muscles, which I've done many videos on this before, and really there's a lot more than the exercises I'm going to show you here. But if I'm trying to basically isolate the obliques and the QL area, which most people would associate with either lateral flexion or rotation. And usually exercises are primarily looking at those particular movements to isolate these particular muscles. So what I'm going to explain to you, which I've done in all the videos prior to this one about muscle strength of a particular area, is the first thing you start with is mobility. So first area I'm going to look at is hip mobility, because very important to do this, because if there's any stiffness through the hips, it's going to inhibit your ability to recruit those muscles that you're looking for, which, through the core, because the hip should be providing the movements of the body so that you can effectively stabilize in those regions. Otherwise, they sacrifice their mobility to find the lost range of motion that you can't perform in the movements where they're really needed for strength, but they're going to give up their strength to basically put you in the position that you want to get to. So first thing I did there was foam rolling. Second thing is this basic hip stretches. Again, there's more than one of these. I'm just showing you an example of what I might use. Depending on the person is where I might change a lot. So the other part that I want to look at, which we've yet to see so far in all these videos I've done so far, because I've started from the feet up, I've worked through the ankles, hamstrings, quads, glutes. Now we're sort of around the trunk region. I have yet to look at the thoracic mobility, so this is the first time we get to see this becoming a factor. And if there's any restriction here, just like with the hips, it's going to really limit the trunk, because it's the joint that's above the area that we're looking at, the muscles of the obliques and the QL. They've got the hips below them, but they have the thoracic above them. And the thoracic is very much like the hips in that it should be providing a lot of mobility, and in this case rotational mobility. I could also include extension, but if we're primarily looking at the rotational and side flexing movements, any stiffness in this region, which is very, very common, is going to really again force the obliques, QLs, to give up their stability objective, which is really what they're concerned with, not mobility, but they're going to give that up to provide the mobility you've lost. All right, so far I've done foam rolling, a hip stretch, thoracic mobility. Again, there's a lot of other ways I can do this. Check the description on the video here for more ideas, because I'm only just showing you one or two, otherwise this video would go for 2 hours. But once I've done that, then I'm going to move into basic stability. And what I'm doing right there, if I just go back for a second, prior to me doing this Horsestance exercise, what I'm doing here is I'm just basically learning to breathe and recruiting my abdominals in its very basic form. So I'm just learning how to, you can't see anything moving here because it's all of my inner unit. So once I've practiced doing that a few times, then I'm going to bring in a basic stability drill, being the Horsestance or bird dog, whatever you prefer to call it, where I'm putting my body in this position of arm and leg moving, and obviously in the middle there my obliques, well, basically nearly all of my abdominal muscles, but even my glutes are under workload here. So basic amount of glutes, even shoulder stability on this arm. So I've got scapula, I've got serratus anterior protraction, but obviously where most people are concerned with is the abdominal region on this one. Very, very simple exercise, but very, very effective. All right, so this would be a great one to sort of start with, just to bring about some of the things that you're looking to on a basic scale. So this is not purely strength, this is just stability only. Really engaging your breathing to get the abdominals to fire at the right time while your arm and legs moving. Again, a lot of people underestimate the power of this exercise. If you wanted to make it about strength, I could add a cable to my leg. That would really take it up a notch. All right, so once I've moved from my mobility of hips, thoracic, I've done basic stability, then is when we start to see people look at isolated exercise. So I'm going to show you one that they're very commonly used for obliques, and you know, and sometimes it's on the floor, and QL as well. So sometimes I actually see this used as a QL stretch, where people would actually stop at around about there and then stretch through here, and that definitely is a QL stretch. But I tend to find that these exercises, so I would not do this exercise. I find, even though it does isolate the muscles very well, I find it is very it's very counterproductive of what these muscles are really trying to do. They're actually not trying to provide the movement. They're actually trying to resist the movement. The second one I see, which is, you know, bodybuilding sort of circles, I never use this exercise. I don't even know if I'm doing it right. It's just stupid. This is like a lateral flexion, pretty much the same thing that I was doing, just the standing version. And again, people will say, but Nick, it's isolating the obliques in its function of doing that. Well, yeah, sure it is, but it's not really. In life, we're never really actually trying to do that movement. We're actually trying to prevent that movement. So it's more of an eccentric contraction within a movement. That's actually, you would never see it move if it was doing its job. Side planks, you know, I don't mind them. I've done videos on this before many times. My preferred version is actually the simplest one, which I'm showing you here, which is the kneeling one. And for the simple reason, it actually has a bit of a movement that uses the hips here. As you can see, I'm sitting back, so it mimics the action of the squat and the deadlift. And you know, in the holding isometric part here, where I'm in a straight line, I've got a bit of glutes on the job here, so the glutes are on, and you can tell when the glutes are on the job because the knees come apart. But you know, obviously, I do have a fair degree of you know, my hips even working as a stabilizer partly in this as well. But obviously the obliques and the QL really working in this side, this frontal plane exercise, which, you know, again, I could do this on my toes, but it's really lacks that ability to move the hips like I'm showing you there. That's why I prefer this easier version. The next one I probably could use is this rotational one. So I bring in this rotational component where I start in the frontal plank and then move to a side plank. This is one of McGill's best exercises for teaching how to rotate correctly. So, you know, you can really see quite clearly when people cheat on this one and when their hips kick out. And I've done this one before many times when I'm looking at lateral pelvic tilt and that, but you'll often see this one, the problems, and I'll just take it back for you, when people cheat on it is usually about that point there. When they lift their arm up, you'll see their hip kick out to the side because they just can't stabilise through the core correctly. So they have to use their hips to do all the work of the abdominals. All right, so again, you know, a great exercise if you're in the beginning stages. It actually is a lot harder than it looks. A lot of people really struggle with this, but the risk of getting it, if things go wrong, is very minimal. So whereas opposed to the standing things, you'll see a lot of problems come about if you make mistakes. Once you sort of worked your way through so we've done mobility of the hips, the thoracic, basic stability, looked at exercises of what not to do. We've done the Horsestance as a basic stability drill. We've looked at the thoracic rotation, or a core rotational drill. Now you can start to move into your standing stuff. So this is where, you know, you start to see wood chops, very much known as your oblique type of exercise. Again, you really need, the legs are a big component here. The weight shift provided from the legs is the key. If I did this standing still, I can isolate the abdominals more effectively, but it's against its purpose of how it would really be done. We don't ever do this movement without our legs being involved. So it's not so much the strength that's as important, it's more it's the timing. It's also important to muck around with the angles and change the angle, starting from high to low, which I did then, which is easier, and then going from low to high where there's a lot more leg drive. So I'm coming up this time, so that left leg really has to provide a hell of a lot of power for me to be able to do this rotation effectively. All right, so but it's important to change these angles and not just do the same position every time. Also moving into medicine balls and more powerful type of movements is a very effective way of getting that movement the way that you want it to be. Alright, so once I've moved into that, then I need to really look at other more integrated movements where we see the frontal plane. So I've seen rotation in that case, but now we're trying to see those two exercises I said not to do before. This is when you actually see those muscles working in a functional movement in the way that they're designed. And this is the suitcase carry exercise, which again I've done many times. So the very first part shares the position of the deadlift, but you can see here as I'm walking, because I only have the load on one side, it really does expose the lateral flexion of my body, where it's if anything fails through my obliques and my QL, even my glutes, even my foot, then I will collapse inwards. All right, and you'll see a lot of lateral flexing of my body. So my QL and obliques actually try to prevent it, not provide it. All right, so and then now you can see where I've got that deadlift position being used there. All right, so if I just take that back, and you'll see right at this point here, I'll just break it down for you. Where the obliques and that are going to fire is every time I get into that point here. All right, especially when I'm on this left leg and the load's on the right hand. So I'm really working. This is where all the slings are involved. All right, so this is where my body, my QL and obliques are trying to prevent me from rocking side to side. All right, they're trying to maintain me in a straight line. That's the only way I'll be able to walk with the load like this. If I rock side to side, that barbell is going to be smashing into my leg. I'm not going to be able to take big steps. I'm not going to be able to move. The only way for me to move is for them to provide stability and keep my body and my torso still, which is what you will see later on with all the single leg exercises. See the same problem, and that problem comes up a lot with knee injuries, hip injuries, obviously back injuries as well, because the spine is getting like flexed sideways. But you'll see loss of power in sports and poor performance, but horrible knee injuries like ACL tears as well. So the suitcase carry is probably one of the most effective ways of like training the QL and oblique in tandem with legs and arms. All right, so this is where, like isolating with a side plank, you can become excellent at side plank, but still suck at that exercise, meaning you're still going to suck at anything that has walking, running, jumping, single leg involved, because the team doesn't know how to work together. If I'm moving from, that's more a bit of a pulling action with grip strength. Now I've got the same thing, but working in a pushing action. So this is the single cable push, and this is where the anterior oblique sling is heavily involved in this. So now again I have to really work heavily through the obliques and the QL to make sure that I don't collapse sideways, especially at that point there where the load's trying to really rip me backward. If my body side flexes on this because I don't have good control through my base of my legs, so mainly the glute on my right leg here, but also through the oblique on this opposite side, that they must be working together to ensure that I stay still to provide the movement that I want. So this is very much mimicking throwing, punching in boxing, but also similar to the stance you would use for running and pushing and in nearly every sport you see. All right, so now I'm moving into the single leg stance. So we sort of saw that with the suitcase carry, but now we're isolating the single leg. So that's where I'm actually staying on it all the time. So obviously a hell of a lot of glute strength. Saw this in a lot of the previous videos, just how important this is. But this is where we start to see you may have good glute strength, good foot control, but you may lose core control. Maybe the stiff hips now wreck this movement for you, which is what we saw at the start. So right in that point there where I'm bent over is where if I have any failure, I'm going to side flex and fall. It could even happen at the start, really, to be honest. It could even happen right here when the person stands up and they have no core stiffness and they just fall over and the hips are ruining all their stability for them. So this exercise is heavily oblique and QL exercise, even though you feel nothing there. Like you might only feel it's a leg exercise, but it's way more than that. So using a ball helps me with stability. I remove the ball. Now I don't have that help anymore. And if any stiffness, you'll see me falling over. I could just do this body weight to begin with, And you see there's a bit of the side flexion there. You'll see the mistakes creep in if anything goes wrong. Obviously there's a lot of moving pieces here. It could be, you can't just blame the obliques, it could be even the foot in getting involved here, but the key is you really need good stiffness at the exact right time. So if I add load to this, especially like the suitcase carry before, if now I'm putting load in that opposite hand, it's really making me uneven, and my torso has to resist this collapsing on the right side, where I'm going to, and there you see the side flexion. That's why I wanted you to see these mistakes, because they're inevitable. You just really need to work out how to eliminate them and really create that stiffness through good breathing and good movement. All right, so this is an excellent example of how to take all of the stuff you're wanting from the isolated stage to the way it's meant to work. And you can see it's more like anti-flexion, anti-rotation. Probably the wood chop's the only one where we're actually seeing it provide rotation. The last one I'll show you is the Turkish get-up, and that's where we start to see all of the things put back together. So this is where a lot of the hip mobility and thoracic mobility from the start becomes a big factor in the beginning, because without it I can't get in the position to actually get up into that point. So this is where your side plank and that is sort of seen there. So you can see I'm in a side flexion, but I've got to make sure that I don't collapse. I needed incredible hip mobility to bring that leg through, even for this other leg. There's just a hell of a lot going on in this exercise. And then obviously I've got the lunge part coming at the end, where I'm standing up and I need some leg drive, leg strength. But I needed really the mobility and the stability of the hips, the thoracic and the trunk to be able to get to that point, to be able to do it. And then they all have to stay on the job at the exact right time, and there's that side plank again. And that's a great exercise to put all the pieces back together of what we've discussed in this video. All right, so quite a long video for this one. You can imagine there's so many moving things. I could have included heaps more, but I hope this gives you an idea of how you might strengthen that region. Again, check the description under the video here, because it has a lot of the things that I've left out, more detailed explanations of things I've just skipped over pretty quickly. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see you on the next one.